My name's Sarah, for those of you that don't know me, Sarah Walker, and I am the social justice lead here at Kerith. So I look after a lot of the outreach projects. And Elaine Chalmers-Brown is CEO, is it, of Pilgrim Hearts? Or director of Pilgrim Hearts, which is a homeless charity in Bracknell. However, she will look at covering homelessness across all areas. So we're going to hear from Elaine this evening.
Well, it's great to be here. I had a lovely conversation with Sarah about what had happened on one Sunday morning and how we could help. Pilgrim Hearts has been going for 22 years. We used to travel all around, going to Slough and Reading and Uxbridge, doing arts projects, working with people on the edge and homeless people. And then one day, David said, why are we traveling around? We keep meeting people from Bracknell. Why don't we do something in Bracknell? So that's actually how Pilgrim Hearts started working in Bracknell. And we were offered to use St Andrew's Church because it was sort of available. So we have been there for 7 years, and we run a drop-in 2 days a week, one at St Andrew's and one at the Methodist. What we've also done in the meantime, we have coordinated and worked with many churches for the night shelters, which I think some of you have all been part of or have actually benefited from. And it was quite interesting because the big, busy churches weren't the ones that got involved, but it was all the other churches. But it's actually about brothers and sisters working together. My reading this morning was from Psalm 133, which is when brothers and sisters work together in unity, there is a blessing. So I think it's a blessing for the town as well. Homelessness. Often people who are homeless have had either a very difficult childhood, difficult life relationships, and actually what they need is understanding. But it's a bit like when Teresa Cotty, who used to be our night shelter manager, there was always boundaries, because there has to be boundaries. And one of our guys once said, if I'd had a mum like you, who was quite strict, I perhaps wouldn't have ended up the way I had. So I think what I want to say to you is we treat people as human beings. We want to love and care for them, but we want to also understand some of the stories they tell us, which may be true or may not be true, but they may just want somebody to listen to them. What we find is, having heard the stories, sometimes they will tell you exactly what they will think you want to hear. Now, we have got information for you about numbers you can ring. If on a Sunday somebody turns up homeless and is in a service, this is what you would do. There is an emergency number, an out-of-hours number. They probably won't be able to house them. The second thing you need to do is direct them to housing options in the council. There is a rough sleeper team, which there never was before, which has been something that's been blessed and brought in to the council. So they need to go to housing options on Monday, and they close at 2 o'clock, so they can't stay in bed all day and then think, oh, well, I'll swaddle around at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, because they won't get any joy whatsoever. But the other thing is, at our drop-in, which we run on Tuesday, we give them a hot meal. We also give them advice on where to go and signpost them. We also tell them We have a doctor's surgery there, which is great. So I know many of you won't be able to walk into a doctor's surgery, but our homeless guys can, which has been a great benefit. Dr. Price used to come to our night shelter, and she's now coming to our drop-in. We also have the rough sleeper team there, and Pilgrim Hearts work very closely with them, and we also have New Hope, which is the drug and alcohol team, and they come as well. And at the moment they're going to do a needle exchange there, which is absolutely vital to keep people safe.
Well, all these agencies are now using our drop-in as a central venue to work.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
So it is a venue that the rough sleeper team and the professionals like to come to, because they're able to see who is mixing with who. And that is really vital. There is also a homeless forum in Bracknell, and there's one in Wokingham, because we also did night shelters in Wokingham as well. One of the great things from COVID, I mean, there's not many great things from COVID, but one of the great things from COVID is that they realised you had people sleeping in church halls in night shelters, and they knew that would spread, and it would be a public health. So instead of seeing homelessness as just somebody without a house, it became a public health issue, which is actually has been of great benefit. And many of the guys and women who were given accommodation have still got that accommodation. And they have moved on in their lives. Because if you're sofa surfing, you still have got no security, whether you're going to have that good relationship with that person the following day, whether there's going to be a row over whether you've done the washing up or you've left something. So I work with Homeless Link, which is a countrywide organisation, but actually looking at it, I also work with a council, and we are looking at rough sleeper numbers. The homeless count is counted on usually 1 o'clock in the morning, and they have to wake somebody up and ask them their name, and that's how they count them.
Your sleep, you were saying, is designed to make sure the numbers are kept very low.
Yes. But if they don't find anybody, then they would have a count of 1 or 2.
Well, it's like when we started here, the council said, oh, there are no homes. I said, you've got 400.
Yeah.
You don't know that you have.
So once we started, one of the things we felt like, we had 5 loaves and 2 fishes, and we had 5,000 people that we were hoping to feed. But one of the things that has come out of that is after Jesus fed the 5,000, he had 12 baskets left, and they were also filled by the disciples. Now, the people we come into contact, whether it's government, police, community security, probation, jails, one of your leaders who is a chaplain in one of our hospitals, when one of our guys was in there, I phoned him up and he went to visit him. We have another friend who's a chaplain in Frimley, and he did the same. And it's that sort of working together that is actually vital. I think for us, we can see some people who just keep going around the system and falling out. And we know there isn't enough mental health services, which is a real problem. And if you have an addiction and you have a mental health problem, mental health services often will not help you. So they will say you need to deal with your addiction first. But the drug and alcohol team, which is New Hope in Bracknell, it's in other areas, they will have a drug and alcohol team. And us working together, also, when we have our core meetings, which was with all these types of people, so it's the council, it's the rough sleeper team, it's the drug and alcohol team, it's probation, community security. You also have people with, they will bring up people, certain people. Now, if they're coming to us or they're coming to New Hope, they have more chance of getting housed. What we have in Bracknell is very little housing, especially for singles, and we are looking to see if we can move that on. Because I think once people have their own front door and a sense of security, you can then start to deal with some of the issues. Now, whether that is issues of debt or... But I would say we also realise that people are struggling. And at the moment, we are having loads of people coming because of the financial crisis. So your food bank here, we are able to give food bank vouchers, which is great. But it's also, they have a hot meal, they have a drink, they're able to sit down, they can relax.
Yeah, we have closed banks.
We have closed banks, a shoe bank. We're always looking for trainers, size 9 to 10 if you've got any. And we always give fresh underwear and socks. There have been many changes. Many of the Europeans that have been working here do not have a right to stay unless they have already registered. So at the moment, we've got somebody who's got no right to stay. He hasn't got universal credit, and we're trying to help him. But these are new challenges that we have that have never been part of it before. One of the other things I was going to say was we have an 0800 number, which I will send to Sarah, and she can send it out to everybody, and it's on our webpage. And that is free to anybody on a mobile phone, because most homeless people will not have a credit on their mobile phone. And many people always get really worried about winter time and them being cold. And, but actually it's in the summer when it's really hot and they get dehydrated is really dangerous. And of course, the new town centre is fantastic, but it doesn't have many places where you can refill bottled water. So all we give out is bottled water to our guys for them to refill it. Why we moved to the Methodist on a Thursday is because they had a bigger kitchen. And for us, it was about keeping our volunteers safe during COVID, as well as our guys. And actually, we've had our guys vaccinated at the drop-in, which has been really good, because for them to actually get to an appointment at Waitrose would have been really difficult. So our doctor organised for our volunteers to be vaccinated, but also for our guys to be vaccinated. I am going to let you come in with questions in a minute. The other thing I think is the rough sleeper team have been really helping these guys move on. But they have to find them out 3 times sleeping rough before they can move them in. So they need to know a location. So quite a lot of the homeless guys sleep in the car parks or will sleep in woods. So we always give out sleeping bags. We don't give out tents because we don't really want to put them into tents. We'd rather them, stay safe. And we never give out money to them because it's much better giving money to organisations that can help. I know there was a group of people which were outside the bank in the town centre, and they made quite a lot of money, can I tell you? But actually it wasn't helping them move on. And what we want to do as Pilgrim Hearts is to give people a hand up, not a hand out. Now, we are looking at what we do for this winter. I don't think we will have night shelters. I think they will not be allowed by public health. What was very interesting when the COVID started is public health had got no idea how many night shelters there were and how many people, like 20 people sleeping in a church hall. We would have to get their permission in order to open night shelters. So what Pilgrim Hearts is looking at is getting accommodation. I even spoke to a local Bible college to see if we could use their accommodation because they had single rooms with en-suites.
Having spoken to Redmond and some hours with him, and he said, right, we'll give the same amount of money to Woking as we have to Bracknell.
Yeah.
In fact, we'll spread it on.
And in a way, I think that's the other catalyst. We've gone into a place like Wokingham. They want to make changes. They've now got Teresa Cotty as heading up their rough sleeper team, which is great. I work with the council very closely in Wokingham. The other thing I was going to say, if you find somebody who is homeless, wherever they are, in StreetLink is another organisation. But StreetLink, you've got to give very precise information. Their name, their age, if they've got a phone number, and where they're going to sleep. Now that will go into a big database, and that will be sent to our council. And our council rough sleeper team starts work at 6:30 in the morning.
Or any other council anywhere in the UK.
Yeah, thank you, David, or any other council in the UK. So StreetLink works across the country, and that is very useful to have as information. Sometimes people just need to feel they're being heard and listened to. Sometimes they feel totally ignored, and sometimes what you need to do is just get alongside them and sit down. What was one of the great things about the night shelters is people could have a common meal together. We haven't been able to do that so much, but I think it's that sort of camaraderie. I have two stories. One from one of the night shelters when we gave somebody a birthday cake. That was the first birthday cake they've had since they were 5, and she was 26. We also had a situation where there was snow on the ground, and one of our coordinators said, there's a prize for the first one to make a snowman. So they went out with actually Teresa and made a snowman, and he was the only one, but he got a prize. And that was the first prize he'd ever had. So I think there's a lot of stuff that we don't know. Libraries are very useful as well, because they're warm, and they can read the paper there, and they can use the computers. Because also you've got people who are not computer literate and don't have smartphones. So that's another sort of barrier which steps in their way. One of the areas that we always work in, especially with women, is giving sanitary products and that sort of thing. Because, again, that is an expense which normally they can't afford. We also, the women are much more vulnerable than the men, but they've often been much more traumatized because they will stay in a relationship much longer than a man will. The man will get out. We've had some great successes, which has been a real blessing. And one of our new volunteers said to us, "Don't you get ever despondent?" And we said, no, because when you see people actually move on, change their lives, get in touch with their families again, get re-established. We had one of our guys who went to his niece's wedding, borrowed one of our night shelter manager's suits. He went up to this wedding and he was reunited with only his children and his grandchildren. And he hadn't seen them for 10 years. And it's that sort of thing that you actually, it makes our day, really. But
and people come and visit.
And people come and visit and say how wonderful or how bad we are. We will take anything. And it's nice to see them, yeah. And then you have the heartaches too. But I was saying to somebody earlier on, we had one guy who had been in our night shelter who had recently died, but his family had written saying, could they give a donation to the night shelters? And actually, they, instead of flowers, they gave a donation to us. But they actually said they knew he was secure when he was in the night shelter. So it's a sense of us giving them a belonging and family, which I think everybody needs. And I think COVID has been difficult for loads of people. We have been open since November the 20th because they were so vulnerable and we were so concerned about them. So I am a bit of a weather freak. So if I get up in the morning and it's, minus 10, I'm worried. If I get up and it's 30 degrees, I'm worried. So it's one of those things that you don't really think about. They haven't got anywhere else to go. And that is the problem. And sometimes some of the agencies aren't helping them. I had one guy recently who just needed us to phone his housing officer because he didn't have a phone. And we just did that. I mean, it was as basic as that. I said, who's your housing officer? He said, Fred Bloggs. And I said, okay. So I phoned through to Fred Bloggs and passed him my phone. And that was as simple as it was. Anyway, I mean, that's...
Sometimes, I've sat for a number of times, 45 minutes, holding the mobile phone, waiting to get through to, say, Job Centre Plus.
Yes.
It will keep you waiting 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And that was a bill of about £8,
Yeah. Yeah.
On my mobile. I can see that. That is not the way to treat people.
No.
But again, it's a matter of passing that back to the good MPs to sort of sort things a bit.
We are in touch with our local MPs and also with the councillors. We are also in touch with people who, I would say, if people are on universal credit, they have a journal And DWP has got to reply within 24 hours. So if they're homeless or if they are in any sort of trouble, if they put that on their journal, it's a sort of, it states it, and it can't be erased, even if they lose their phone, because DWP will have that record. And I think that's also a way we can help very easily. But nobody would necessarily think about doing that, especially if we didn't have a smartphone. I'm just thinking if there are...
Invalid chairs?
Yes. Yeah, we had some funding given to us during COVID, which was great, except it had to be spent within 3 weeks because it had to be spent by the 31st of March. So, in fact, we went out and bought a van. But actually, that has helped one of our guys who's in a mobility scooter who'd run out of electricity. And so we were able to pick it up and bring it. At the drop-in, they charge their mobile phones. They also charge their mobility scooters. And we try and give them a balanced meal. So they will have fruit, fresh fruit. They will have a dessert as well as a main meal. And we get our main meals.
Extras over from...
Yes, and we hand extras for them to take as well, so they can cook for themselves if they are in accommodation. I'm just trying to think. If people would like to ask questions, I think I've covered everything I wanted to say, but I
wrote down a few things that I thought might be helpful for people to ask some questions, but also just a few points. So I can get information out to you about Pilgrim Hearts on the website. They've got a website, it's got all the telephone numbers and everything. Bracknell Forest Council do have a 24-hour out-of-office service for anybody that you may come across who's homeless, as should every council. So it will be on their... I don't know, yeah, they do put it on their websites, actually. But if not, it's just a matter of getting in contact with your local council and seeing what's what. And I just really wanted to pick up on what you said, Elaine, about it's so important that we give everybody dignity. It could have just been a series of unfortunate, most of the time it is just a series of unfortunate events that has led somebody to be homeless. And being homeless is not necessarily being on the street, sleeping in shop doorways. There's so many homeless people that we come across as well that are sofa surfing and sleeping in tents in forests and things like that. And actually, we're all really just a few paychecks away from being in a difficult situation. So the importance of us treating everybody with dignity is huge. And I liked what you said, Elaine, about, we want to give people a hand out. No, you said a hand up, not a hand out. And that's what we believe here as well, very much. We want to teach somebody to fish rather than give them a fish. We want to, we don't want to be giving them a fish every day. We want to teach them how to fish themselves. We believe that actually everybody has the autonomy to make their own decisions. Most of you don't find homeless people that are not adults. They would be scooped up by child social care. And actually, let's respect their decisions. We generally don't say give money, but if you want to give money, that's your choice. But give them the choice to spend their money that you've given them as they want to. That's the other thing to say. So I wouldn't personally. I would go and say, go into Greg's or go into a shop and buy them a sandwich. What sandwiches do you like? Recently, I took a couple of girls into town and got them some lunch and got them a few bits to eat that night and a sleeping bag, etc. But actually giving them the choice and the dignity that they need, and actually just treating them like human beings is, as I'm sure we all do, but it's really important. It's really important that we don't create dependencies as well and promise stuff that we can't meet. So It's really difficult, actually, for a lot of them, as Elaine said, because they won't have internet access quite often. They won't have much credit on their phone. So, here, when we run our cafe, we provide the Wi-Fi password, and Elaine at the drop-in, it's available to use for internet, and there's loads of places that have internet available. And we don't mind people charging their phones here, and there's quite a few places that will allow people to charge their phones. But it's just bearing this in mind. And now we've gone to an age where everything is online. You've even got to apply for universal credit online. And actually, for somebody who doesn't have any internet or much phone credit, that's really, really impossible. So any ways, and actually, we can offer a little bit of a hand to them where they've got a lot of barriers up against them helps. And we know that love always wins. So many people that we come across just feel unheard. They feel, and that just invalidates them, and they don't feel like an actually aware. Everyone wants to be heard, and actually, when you're speaking to some of the benefits officers, they're dealing with so many people on a daily basis, and we want to be heard. These people, everybody wants to be heard. But I've got a few questions that came up, Elaine. So we're walking down the street, and we come across somebody who's homeless. What should we do? What do you think would be your suggestion what we would do?
I would engage with them. I would say, hello, how are you? How's your day? Because 200 people will have walked past them or really looked down on them. So I would actually look at them. I had a guy come up to me just outside Waterloo Station and say, can I have some money? And I said, well, actually, there's a homeless charity just over the bridge. Why don't you go there? Because they could have looked after him in a bit better way. I think you're right about people making choices. They are adults and they can make the wrong choices, and we can't scoop them up and say, there, never mind, it won't matter. But what we can do is stand by them when they're making the wrong choices.
Yeah.
And we've had one of our success stories who used to come into our drop-in in tears and drunk every time. Now, at the moment, he's got 2 jobs. He's bought back his father's motorbike. He's doing incredibly well, and he's in a whole different place. He's back with his family, so that shows that people can move on.
Well, we've seen the ex-director of a multinational.
Yeah.
Who was quite happy to, I can get all the food I need, and I'm quite happy sleeping there. I think, get yourself in gear, mate. Well, after about 8 months he did. He's now running a 700-person firm again. He's going again, which is excellent.
The other thing I would say to that, somebody came in and said that person cannot be homeless because his voice is too posh.
Well, I'm challenging you.
And I was... Yes. We used to say that, if you can tell who was the guest and who was the volunteer, and lots of them couldn't tell. Sorry.
No, that's great. Wine? Yeah, no, that's really great. And that is actually, isn't it, our attitudes and actually how we can be quite judgmental and stereotypical of what somebody who's homeless looks like. We've got no idea. No idea. No, that's great. Just mentioning, really want to touch on the importance of boundaries, maybe, with homeless.
The thing is, we would never give our home address out. We would never give a telephone number out which they couldn't use and that wasn't publicly. You would only meet, we would only say you would meet people 2 together, or in a public place. You can say, well, let's meet here or at our drop-in, because that's in a public place. There is no ambiguity. If David is driving somebody in the car, we usually let another volunteer go with him as well, because...
I'm not too fussed. I'm good enough.
Yeah, but, But
if somebody makes allegations against you, you need to have another
yeah,
person there as a witness.
and
It's never happened with us, but it has happened in
yeah,
other places, and it's just part of safeguarding, really.
yeah, it is a safeguarding issue. And if somebody divulges something to you that needs to be escalated up, then you need to do that under safeguarding. We had a situation quite recently, and I escalated that up to their safeguarding, and this was somebody with not total mental capacity.
The trouble is, some of those safeguarding is sometimes just does nothing,
But you have to protect yourself, and that's the most important thing. Yeah.
Don't expect everything always to work, and it may well be you just need to like to get at it at a later stage.
Yeah.
And keep slowly working at it. It's not something that happens overnight. We've had people come along, funders, oh, if you can turn them around and get them into work in 3 weeks, here's lots of money.
Yeah, it's very much relationship building. Yeah. And that whole safeguarding thing doesn't just apply to homeless, people. No. That applies to actually everybody that we might not know that we come across. We certainly do that in all of our ministries as well, just to protect the guest and to protect us as well. There is still a lot of stigma around homelessness, and people assuming things about the homeless person, that they might have addiction or mental health problems. Some of the time they will have addiction and mental health problems, but that's not always the case, is it? It's just being like, you wouldn't just meet somebody on the street and just offer them a lift, so it's just being cautious, and keeping ourselves safe in the process as well. Do you want to say anything more on that?
No, I mean, I would say also keep praying for them, because, you have that, even if you can't be there, there's somebody there. And we say nobody comes to our drop-in by accident. Now, that may be the volunteers just as much as the people who come through the door. Yep. And, we understand that not everybody's going to turn their life around in 3 weeks, but it's about building a relationship with that person. I mean, some of them I tell off as if I'm telling off a child, because they're acting really childishly, and sometimes I'm not the most patient with people, but I will fight their corner, because I want the best for them, and that's the most important thing.
We're all individual cases.
Yeah.
Each one is different. Each one has slightly different problems. And it's only by carefully working that through and getting the various agencies who can do that and can help on that to assist that things can really happen. Yeah. It's a slow process, basically.
It is.
We all sit down and eat together.
Yeah, it's about sharing. It's about sharing life, isn't it, together, and just having a relationship. Absolutely. Yeah, people need to know that they belong and that they are loved before anything else happens, quite often. Yeah. And what about, so we touched on food. So I know here, our food bank and a lot of other food banks will do a specialist food pack for people that are homeless, because they haven't, it depends on where they're living. We get a few people that have been put up in the travel lodge. We get a few people that are in tents, and they haven't got cooking facilities. Quite often we'll give out knives and forks and can openers, but a lot of the time we'll give sort of ring pull cans, pot noodles. Well, not even pot noodles, maybe. It depends if they've got a kettle. But yeah, stuff that they can, eat out of the can. But actually. That's possible, certainly food banks can do that. So, if you're taking...
Many of them are now housed, and that's the key to the thing, which fortunately the government have realised. We can house people, then really the whole process can accelerate into getting...
Yeah. And one of the problems that all councils have is there's not enough housing
No.
in the area. That's
No.
one of the key problems. And we were talking, both Elaine and I are involved in a Ukraine project, aren't we, with working with the council on Ukraine refugees coming into the area. And we've been involved in some of the meetings there as to how many people are coming in and how we can best support them. And the council actually are doing quite, some great work in supporting them, making sure that everyone's welcomed. They're getting a welcome pack when they come in. Some community events organised for the Ukraine refugees as well. But actually, the host families had a commitment for 6 months. You kind of know it's not going to be over in 6 months, It's going to be longer than 6 months. And actually what happens at the end of that 6 months, because the council then have a duty of care to rehouse, but there's not much housing in the area. So, where there could be knock-on effects with that as well. But, these poor families have been through enough already, having escaped their home and their family for war and turning up in a country where perhaps they don't even speak our language. It's pretty horrendous.
And in fact, some of the meals that we have been going to some of the Ukrainian families. And the problem is the Ukrainians are very proud people, and it's only when they're on their really down will they actually accept a gift. But if you think of the government haven't decided what's going to happen after the 6 months. Now there's going to be the summer recession, and 6 months, it ends in September. The other thing I wanted to mention was universal credit. They can have rent of £700, but if you can try and get a room for £700 in Bracknell with a landlord which will take somebody on universal credit, you are very fortunate.
Well, there needs to be
And so that's a whole there's a whole can of worms there.
You get London ratings.
Yeah.
When you're near London, and similarly with other big towns.
Yeah.
The same system needs to be put onto that as well.
And I don't know if you've seen on the TV, I heard it on the radio a few months ago, and I've seen it's an ad, and it says, no home, no job, no home, no job, no bank. And it goes round in this vicious circle, because actually when you're homeless, you haven't got an address, you can't get a bank account, you haven't got a bank account, and it's this vicious circle. And actually there are some lenders now who are, I can't remember who it was, who are doing that and actually allowing you to open, because I know we've used this address as a care of sometimes. But there's improvements being made, but actually we probably need to be speaking up more for these people. And in the Bible, it talks about speaking up for those who cannot speak up for themselves. And that's what I think we're all passionate about doing that.
We found doctors, receptionists who would not take my, go and bring your birth certificate. And eventually I gave them an NHS postcode. And actually if I go there, they get seen. Right, registering now, and look up Lord and the so-and-so, and here's a pamphlet on it. You're obliged to register without any details. Do it.
And that you gave some cards out as well, didn't you? That they could just take with them.
Yeah.
I know we had some here.
The other thing is, homeless people do have the vote, which I like to remind every politician when we're next to a polling station, because they do have the right to vote, even if they're homeless and they haven't got an address. And most of the politicians have been, on the whole, very supportive.
Yeah.
But they also, the other thing I didn't mention is you need to work from where the person is. So if they're a person from Bracknell, or have a job in Bracknell, or have a family in Bracknell, then the Bracknell Council can work with them. If they come, we had a church in which was under Windsor and Maidenhead. We couldn't do anything with that person. They had to go through Windsor and Maidenhead, and it's the same wherever you are. And we have had people who we have gone down and bought a train ticket for the place they did have accommodation but had decided to leave. and we think they hadn't realised they'd left. And it was a veteran. So we actually got him back there. Now, it was for them to sort that out because he was living down there. So, it's those sort of little odd bits.
Yeah, there's a few tick box exercises that the council need, isn't there, as far as links, local links in the area. So it's like, how long have you lived in the area? Do you have a job here, or that kind of thing? So so these are useful bits to know. Actually, everybody that's homeless is entitled to see a GP. Every homeless person is entitled to vote. The new bank account is a great step in getting them back on the ladder if they haven't got a bank account. And that's kind of, these days, bank accounts are kind of important. I would like to think that we can still use cash, but actually being an ex-CAP debt centre manager, but we can't. The reality is that cash, isn't always liked in a lot of places. A lot of places are card only now, so... Yeah, absolutely. So, so bank accounts are needed. So, just thinking about wider services for homelessness across the country, Shelter give quite a bit of information about homelessness, don't they?
Yes, they do, but they are based in London, and we haven't got a local thing. The CAB also, there is special laws. We had somebody phone us up who had been evicted with 4 cats on a Friday afternoon and was expecting to go to the council and be housed. I've had another call from her. Somebody had left prison. They are bringing in that nobody can be let out of prison on a Friday, because often they're let out on a Friday afternoon, and then that is, they're then left for the weekend without anything. So they are changing that. We are trying to work very closely with the hospitals to make sure nobody is discharged without somebody in Bracknell Council or the New Hope knowing about it. If they're homeless. Because you don't want somebody who's been in hospital coming out of hospital and then being left on the streets.
Discharged at sort of midnight on Friday. That's very helpful.
Yeah.
Come on. The hospital has a team of social folk who should be sorting that.
Yeah, I mean, everybody should have... we also have quite good links with the police, and the police commissioner came and visited us as well. And we get money from him, which is quite good, because they sell all the stolen goods. I give it back to other people.
Excellent.
Yeah, ones what they can't trace, yes.
Excellent. So you mentioned homelessness. Was it Homeless Link or Homelessness Link?
There's Homeless Link, which has got nearly 900 different homeless organisations throughout the country. And I'm on their joint committee. And we look at homelessness in a strategic level, going up into government, as well as looking at it countrywide. So it's not just London-centric, it is much wider than that.
Great, so you're getting a voice in there. You're getting a voice into
I'm
government
getting a voice
policies.
in there, you know me, I'll try and get a voice in anywhere.
That's great. So, I know that I've phoned Shelter a few times for people that I've met just to get some basic advice from Shelter. They're good, and I know that we speak quite often to refer people. There's a lot of the Rough Sleeper team. I can't comment for the Rough Sleeper team in other councils, but I know the Rough Sleeper team in Bracknell are brilliant. They're really quite good. They weren't in existence sort of 5 years ago, 6 years ago, but it's been in the last probably 4 years.
3 years ago. I think
it's just before COVID, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they were amazing over COVID, actually.
Yeah, they were.
Really incredible. So there's, there are some great teams being put together across the councils, and in every council there should be a team that works specifically with the homeless, rough sleeping, sofa surfers, etc. The stats will never be right, when the councils are doing their overnight sleep out stats, because you can't count how many people are sofa surfing and that kind of thing. But it's so. If we do come across somebody that is rough sleeping, we can strike up a conversation. I know when I've walked past people, and I've always said to my son, you just treat them like you would treat anybody else, and actually, how many people have walked past them, like you said, Elaine, how many people have walked past them and just ignored them, and just stopping and saying, hi, how are you? And you don't necessarily have to give them anything, but just striking up a conversation so they are seen, they are heard, they are validated, that they are human. Because, when people are ignored time and time again, they just dehumanises. And that was good. I wrote that down myself. So, no, that's great. Over to you guys. Have you got any particular questions? We haven't really covered much about what people are feeling, as far as what they might be feeling, as far as having nowhere to live. And I know that a lot of, if we look at poverty and the effects of poverty on people, it's not always the lack of material possessions, the lack of a house, the lack of money, the lack of a car. It's quite often the feelings of being inadequate, the feelings of being a failure, the feelings of I've messed up, the feelings of I'm not worth anything. No one should really feel those things.
No. I think people are 3 pay packets away from homelessness. So that can affect anybody. And I think the other thing is lots of people, one of our trustees went on a mental health course, and that was about sleep hygiene and how sleep is incredibly important. Well, if you're having to sleep with one eye open because you're sleeping rough, and you're worried about your stuff getting stolen, then you're not going to have a natural sleep. It's not like us all getting into a comfortable bed, at whatever time it is, and waking up feeling refreshed. So you're going to feel tired for a start. You may be out of sorts. You may not have had a meal for a couple of days. We have people who've not eaten or not had breakfast, or, they may have. But it's also a bit about the lack of choice. I don't have a choice in this matter. I'm sort of stuck here, and I don't know how I'm going to get out of it. And I think it's about us helping people, just to come alongside them and say, okay, you may be a bit like me phoning this housing officer who, because the guy had lost his phone because it had been stolen, it's a bit like people want often to give homeless people loads of stuff. Well, how are they going to carry it? Where are they going to put it all day? So, it has to be sensible. Yeah. Yeah.
How long did you carry that before it went over the garden wall?
Yeah.
About an hour.
Because again, they can't carry physically that thing. They may, one of our veterans always kept his feet immaculate. And when COVID happened, one of the guys moved with him into a flat share, and this guy didn't even know how to make a bed. So the skill sets, often they've come from very dysfunctional families. And I think some of the heartbreaking things is we had a 19-year-old who came, whose mother had a new partner, and he was pushed out. Now, actually, he went off to college, and he's doing really well. But, if somebody hadn't been there to pick him up at that point, you don't know where he would have been. So I think it's about being worldly wise in a way.
Yeah. And, we're all Christians. We've got the added advantage of the Holy Spirit and discernment. So, we can always pray for discernment and actually, how can I help this person? And maybe ask them, how can I best help you? And then use your discernment. Is that really going to be the best way of helping them, or can I help them in another way? And we might just, we might not come across somebody who's homeless for a few months, and something from this conversation might just click, and and just think, oh yeah, I remember what was said. So thank you for that, Elaine. Has anyone got any questions?
I just wondered. What happens with people, you said that if people have got accommodation provided for them and you give them food to take away, what happens with those people who haven't got accommodation still and need food to take away when the drop-in centre's not open? Sort of how do you sort of...
Yeah, we give them what they can have. I mean, we'll often have fruit. We'll often have, say, sausages, so they can take that away. We will also give them crisps, biscuits. We may say, do you want a food bank voucher? So it'll be practical things rather than, here, put this in the microwave for 6 minutes. Having said that, we had one situation during COVID when the kitchens were closed and somebody was put in a a hotel, and they didn't have anything to cook on. Anyway, so what we did, they took a box in that happened to have a microwave in it. Now, whether that was the right thing to do or not, but it was a practical thing to do, and it stopped somebody not having food.
Yeah. Can I just ask, because you're at St Andrew's Priestwood?
Yeah.
So, Methodist Church. So whereabouts is Methodist Church in relation to here?
It's in Shepherd's Lane, which is just a walk down. We've always wanted it to be within walking distance, and that's initially when with the night shelters. They all had to be within walking distance of the town, except the two, one in Binfield and Seventh-day Adventists. But we had a van then. But yeah.
Yeah, and also I wondered about were the shower facilities for the washing facilities?
Yeah, that has been really difficult. I tell you why, because they used to be able to go to the sports centre if you're under universal credit, because the council have now sublet that to a company. They can't go in there, which has been really difficult. So shower facilities, clothes washing facilities, if I had my ideal building, it would have showers in it, it would have clothes. Because, and that is a problem.
Yeah, we're trying it, that's with the night shelter, is you need those sort of facilities to washing facilities, clothes washing facilities, that sort of thing, shower. And some did have, and that was quite useful.
Yeah. In fact, Father Danny used to use his washing machine.
Yes, he used his own one, bless him.
How many sort of homeless people do you approximately get? Sort of, I presume it's a weekly thing that you do at the moment.
We have about 20, 20. And then there may be a slightly different number and a slightly different. So if you put together, there's about 30 to 50.
Never put your finger on whether they'll appear that day or not.
And, our volunteers are, just as much there to help and serve and to benefit, as well.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else, or doesn't have to be a question, a comment or suggestion, anything that's worked for you in the past or anything else? No, go for it.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how we as Christians can move forward, with the homelessness situation. Obviously, if the council are taking a big part, and there is going to be no night shelter, I'm just speaking because I know in the past the parish where I'm have sort of raised funds for the night shelter. And we're sort of between a rock and a hard place at the moment, in that we have a pot of money that was raised for that, but obviously it's sort of stagnant at the moment. Now, do we wait for the possibility of night shelters reopening, or do we sort of see what the council would like to happen, or yourselves, or whatever, and obviously, whatever would happen would have to be a PCC decision, but I'm just trying to sort of think of the way forward in case suddenly, and also with the increasing cost of living as well, and if people who have got accommodation, how are they going to cope with like the heating and lighting bills and that kind of thing? So, and I'm just wondering if other churches have got similar pots, and if we could actually do something with those for, to help.
It's always seemed to me that the churches could put a number of people up. There may well be plenty of people within the church who could take a lodger in.
But you'd have to be very careful who you would take. But we have to, and I know your church at one time was actually offering us accommodation, which would have been great. And that, and I've talked to Lee about that, and the situation has slightly moved on. So I think actually the problem is the hard reach fund of the council, they are pointing everybody to the charities in order to help. Now, we have a young man who's just moved into a flat, and they've actually asked us to pay for his flooring.
That's not what we're there for.
No.
It's not what we're there for, but in order, because of his situation, we would probably do that. But it's not, that should come out of somebody else's budget, really. And
you work a bit when you earn money.
But so I think it's a conversation that needs to be had, because there's many churches that have got hard reach funds, and whether you pull them all together and you could do something much bigger, or whether everybody wants to just keep their own little pot. But,
Did you say earlier that Public Health England are not wanting, it's looking like Public Health England is saying no night shelters this year, or is that coming from, where's that coming from?
That's coming from Public Health England, but it's also, if we had 20 people sleeping in this room, they would want you to divide everybody up.
They want them in individual accommodation with one-suite facilities.
Okay. So is that a definite for this winter, or is that on the books? We don't know yet.
That is probably what is going to happen.
Right, okay.
And I think with the churches, a lot of people have found problems. So, I think it's also about volunteering, and we had some great volunteers, but people have moved on and may not want to do it. One of the other problems that we have, and that people have changed what they want to do work-wise. We were quite fortunate during furlough, because we had cabin crew working at our drop-in. Now, if they brought back a plane load from Ibiza, they could cope with our lot with no problem at all. But I do think it is something. But I think what they're saying is you've got to talk to each public health individually, and which is a nonsense, because it does need to come down from the top. But I actually think it would be cheaper to put 4 people in a travel lodge than to have all the volunteers and all the organisation.
Well, the council had quite a lot of
Yeah,
but a year to solve it from central government. Bracknell had 750, working at similar amount.
so yes. But what they are doing, which I think is very positive, because it was always just 1 year in the planning, they are now doing a 3-year plan, because our Prime Minister wants to end homelessness by the next general election. Which is great, and I mean, if they are bringing in some laws, rather than sending drug addicts to prison, if you can actually get them on to a rehab, but most rehabs are totally full at the moment. So there's all that situation.
So there's lots for us to be praying into, isn't there, really, actually? And I wonder what we as Christians could do together to try and come up with a solution. I don't know, but lots to pray into, isn't there?
Yeah, well, we would value prayer and, in all the work that we do, but also we chair the Homeless Forum for Bracknell. So that's all the organisations getting together, and I think that's something, which also needs prayer for, because the council wants things to happen. They save money with people in accommodation. So I think that's what you sort of push. I think you talk to your councillors, you talk to your MPs, you talk to anybody, because I think we are salt and light in this environment, and that's what we need to do. Yeah, absolutely. Great. And we know that this country would have fallen apart if it hadn't been for the food banks. And, when we started the thing from Esther about you are there for a time such as this, and I think, we are all here for a time such as this. But, things have moved on and are better, but they need to be even better.
And actually, when we're looking at, the council referring more and more to the charity sector, actually, that's an amazing privilege that we get to come alongside these people and share the gospel with them and get to pray with them and everything else. So actually, we can be quite grateful for that in a way, can't we?
And I think they realise how the faith organisations have stepped up to the plate and how they need them. So I think that has perhaps in the past been put on the side. You go to church on Sunday and it's all very nice and fuzzy. But actually, when they see things practically happen, I think that's when it ticks boxes, and then people ask you, why are you doing it?
Yeah.
And you then have an opening.
Yeah, and particularly around COVID, there was a lot of action going on from so many of the charities when a lot of the other services were closed.
Yeah.
So
one of the other things that we have thought about is whether we have a meal together somewhere, but that there's no. I think what we need to do is to get together with all the people who are interested and really discern what is the best. Because again, if you've got loads of volunteers and all the organisation, but you've only got 4 people, then putting them in the travel lodge is, and it's cheaper. I mean, they may not get the fellowship, and that's the other thing. That's about, building on community, because that's a lot of them what they miss.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that relational aspect is crucial. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, if nobody's got any more questions or anything they want to say. I just wonder, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here, Elaine.
Okay.
But what would you maybe say, to close us off, what would you maybe say to somebody who's homeless to give them some encouragement? Let's say you bumped into somebody. What might you like to say to them? Not advice, but more encouragement.
I just gone, perhaps asking their name, where they're from, have you been homeless long? Have you just, it's about having that conversation. And sometimes it is about perhaps buying a sandwich, but sometimes it's just about engaging and just chatting and, really, I think, encouraging them that there are opportunities and there are loads of places which will help. And during the pandemic...
I'm minded that, for example, I think we were in Bustless railway station. A fellow came to me and said, I haven't eaten for 3 days. And he was a perfectly respectable looking guy. And he said, can you give me some money? So I said, come with me where I've just eaten. Well, give them a meal, pick what you want off the menu. And that's more practical. Just give somebody help. Whatever they need at the time, might be clothes, whatever.
Yeah.
But the individual, if you know of organisations around, you may not in a different town. Hey, that's just different. Use your own head. But basically, that's what it's about. It's trying to plug them into.
Yeah.
But basically, treat them as a fellow human being.
Yeah.
Don't lecture them. Last thing to do. Don't tell them what they should be doing. That's the last thing I want to hear.
Sorry, me. It was quite interesting when I was on a course, and we spent some time at St Martin in the Fields. Yeah. And we were asked to observe the homeless there. And myself and my friend, who many of the ones who were with us, just sat and observed. And I said, but they're not animals. I actually, let's go and have a talk to them. So we did. And it was really interesting, and they were very open and honest with us. One was a severe alcoholic and admitted that, and they both, I think, sort of were on at least cannabis, if not more. Yeah. And they were very honest, and yes, their backgrounds. They told us their story, and which were very sad. And unfortunate, but they didn't actually say like poor me kind of thing. And one of them actually did try to get a job and actually did get a job, but because they got nowhere to regularly get a shower, they could get a shower once a week if they were lucky at St Martin in the Fields around there. But of course there's so many that congregate around there. I think they get about, is it a quarter of the country's homeless people that sort of congregate around there or go to and fro every day, really. Anyway, sort of talking to them, and they said that the code on the street had altered a lot since they first started sleeping rough. And they said at one time you could leave your things out, and that they would, you could rely that they would still be there when you actually went back. Now it's a case, it's more of a dog-eat-dog situation, and basically your stuff, will be whipped from you, and you'll suddenly find you have no sleeping bag, no whatever possessions you have, no nothing. And it actually was quite strange, because when we were talking to them, this woman came up who was also homeless, and the tension that she caused was unbelievable. They seemed very protective of us, and then the sense of relief after she'd gone, and they actually said, she's a bit of a, we didn't say anything, they said, she's a bad one, this one, you've got to be careful. And they were very protective of us, but they did say quite clearly, don't give us money, because we will only spend it on drugs or drink. What we are looking for, but which we would love to have and that we miss, is nice home-cooked food.
Yeah.
And that was sort of what they were asking for. And I just thought, you know, my heart really sort of bled for them. And I'm just thinking, you know, we can't go helping everybody that we pass, which is sad. But at least if we all helped at least one person that we saw, and even if it was just a sandwich, or even bought them a jacket potato from somewhere like Wetherspoons, or whatever it may be, something that's a bit more substantial, then that would benefit them more.
And St Martin's in the Fields do great work, and they take homeless guys and gives them jobs.
Yeah.
And some other companies do that as well. Pret a Manger do that. There is also the Passage in London. They train people and give them food hygiene courses and all sorts of things. And they then go and work in some top London hotels, which, you know, I'm sure the clientele who are going in there have got no idea. But, you know, I think that's how you think of things more creatively.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and companies have been very helpful to us. You know, Waitrose has been helpful, Morrison's. Yeah, you know.
That's all right. Great. Thank you. I think we'll wrap it up there. So let's give Elaine a big round of applause. Thank you, Elaine, for this evening. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we are pilgrimhearts.org.uk if you want to, but I will send that through, and I'm sure you can.
Yeah, I'll follow it up with an email to everybody that was here, just with some more information. So you've got that.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you. You are free to leave if you wish to.